Orange team.
Hey guys, I'm Tim.
I'm Bob.
I'm Mike.
And this is the Board Game Rundown, and today we're going to preview Soiled. Mike, you've been playing a lot of this game.
I have.
Tell us about Soiled.
Soiled is designed by John Englert and his company, Eat Dirt Games. This is coming to Kickstarter very soon. So we're going to show you how it plays and what we think of it.
Cool.
So everybody gets a hand of 5 cards.
Da-da-da.
We are jealous neighbors trying to build up or grow the greatest garden. But because we're jealous, we're also going to be sabotaging each other's gardens.
Yeah.
So we're going to draw 5 cards, and then you get to perform 3 actions on your turn, and that's what everybody does in that round. So action 1, you can plant a card. So when you plant a card, you're just going to place it into your garden like so. Your garden has 6 plots. You've got 2 plots for full sun, 2 plots for partial sun, and 2 plots for full shade. So my full sun carrot here could be planted into my full sun plot. Now, he does not have a plant ability. I have 2 other actions. I can water a card. So when you water, you just place water directly on the card. The whole goal of the game is to be harvesting these cards and putting them into your garden basket, which is how you score them at the end of 12 rounds. We're going to play 12 turns where everybody gets a turn. And so for this card to be fully grown, he would have to have 2 growth tokens and 4 waters on him. Well, there's more than one way to grow a plant. One way is at the end of the round when everybody has done a turn, the plants will grow automatically. Or as one of my actions, I can discard my entire hand just to add a growth token to it. Okay, so that's the main thing you're going to be doing is planting, but you also have to harvest the plant, which takes an action. So you harvest it, you pick it up, dump all the tokens off of it. You're going to flip it over and put it into your garden basket like so. Now, this particular card has a harvest action. If I gain a harvest action in this turn. So by harvesting him, I could harvest another card for free if I had one in my garden here. So you get to water cards. You can also compost them. When you compost a card, you're essentially discarding it. So you can discard from your hand directly into the discard pile, or you can even take a card that's already been planted in your garden and you can discard it from there. Now, there are some cards that have a compost action on them, like my carrot, for example. If I compost him, he says I can remove all weeds from my garden. Well, that's one of the other ways you can sabotage your neighbors is you don't want to plant weeds in your garden. You want to plant them in your friend's garden because for every weed at the end of the game, that is -1 point.
And it's also a space eater.
It's a space eater. There's also a, what was it called? The parasitic weed,
Yes.
which will uproot one of your existing plants, and he goes in its place, which is a very mean card. You also have the opportunity to put these little pests on other players' cards. Pests do not allow the plant to grow.
Yeah.
So that plant cannot grow. You can't force it to grow. You can't discard plants. It does not grow. It can be harvested with the pest on there, but it's hard to grow. You gotta get rid of the pests, which cards allow you to do.
Can you just compost it?
You could compost a card with pests on it. Yep, that is true. So you can plant, you can water, you can compost, you can harvest, and like I said, you can discard your whole hand. Has to be 3 or more to grow a plant. Once all players have done that, it's the end of the round, and you're going to grow all plants that are eligible to grow. What that means is it can't have a pest on it because plants with pests don't grow. It's possible, another way to sabotage players is you can overwater their plants. So if this guy has a max of 4 water to be considered fully grown, Tim could sabotage me, overwater my plant. Now my carrot has 5 water tokens on it. So what that means is when it gets to the growth phase, instead of him growing, I have to discard one of the waters. Now I got to hope he doesn't get sabotaged before I get the opportunity to harvest him. So that's what you're doing. You're working on your own garden, trying to get these plants fully grown and fully watered. You're also, of course, you're going to try to harvest them. And whoever has the most points in their garden basket at the end of the game wins. You'll subtract any of the weeds and as many pests as you have in the garden. And that's the whole game.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, you went into a lot of detail, right? But I mean, really, the turn
guide's really
Mike
good.
explained the game when we played, and then the turn guide is right there to basically answer every other question you might have. And it played really straightforward, and yeah, I thought,
That's why I figured I could tell every rule.
Yeah,
it doesn't
you really
take
could.
long.
really
and it plays
could.
pretty quick. So
this is a pre-production copy.
Yep.
So, you know, components wise, I mean, I think basically the chits are going to be what they're going to be. Not going to over focus on those very much, even though they're fine. They're functional. They do exactly what they need to do. But I do want to point out that I love the artwork on the cards. I love these goofy.
That's why I put the little Twitter swag out here that he gave us. The art on the cards is fantastic.
Yeah, I stole one of these stickers and put it on my one of my metal water bottles because I really like it.
These things.
There's a lot of green on there, so kind of like you see through it a little
Oh,
bit.
sure.
Oh yeah, they're all faded. Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, and the cards also, I mean, with the iconography and everything, they lay out really well what they do. And yeah, I just think it's really,
very
really
cutesy.
straightforward and solid. Now, this is really a mean.
He doesn't have any green, and he's one of my favorite drawings.
It can be a mean.
The potato looks great.
I mean, take that kind of game because you are going to have to actively do stuff to your neighbor's gardens to be successful. I don't think you could just sit there by yourself and try to play your own game and
not
win.
play any weeds or do anything. Yeah.
It's all too frequent that the better move is sabotaging somebody working on a very high point total card than it is for you to try to work on one of your low point total cards. It is very interactive. Yeah, and I didn't talk about the cloche, which, by the way, he did clarify. You can put as many of those on a plant as you want.
Son of a gun.
Yeah, so you have a way to protect your plants, and that's that cloche he just showed.
But I
it
feel like-
protects a card from being
I
attacked.
feel like Bob was the only one getting those
I
cards.
was too. I had like 3 of them in my hand at one point in time. I was like,
And-
how many of these can I put on a card?
So if you place it on a plant, it protects it. It blocks an attack, but then that cloak goes away. Cloche, I don't know the pronunciation for that. And now it can be
Cloche.
attacked again. But we did clarify with the designer, you can put as many of those as you want.
Yeah,
on
no,
there.
it does take an action, right?
Sure.
Takes
Takes
an
an
action
action,
to do.
play that card,
so
yep.
there is some mitigation there, right? Like,
Right.
you know, you can't just, well, I'm going to load this guy up and now I'm going to do all my other stuff. Like, no, you still have to decide, you know, in the economy of your turn, you know.
Well, my garlic needed 8 growth tokens, so when I got to like 6, I didn't want you guys screwing it up, so I could have just taken a turn and just protected the crap out of it.
Right.
Yeah, so what you'll find is you'll find these cards in here that are like 10 or 15 points. And the game tends to score in around the low 20s to high teens. So when you see somebody get a card like that, you have to pay attention.
Yep.
You got to do everything in your power to prevent them from being able to fully grow and harvest that card. So, yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of a beat on the leader, but I like how
Everything's face down.
Everything's face down. So you're kind of guessing what people have. And the other thing I like is those high point cards have negatives depending on what's in your basket.
Like, oh, don't do too many of these.
Yeah, that's not a flat 15 points. That's 15 points minus 3 points for every full sun plant you have in your garden basket. And there's a lot of variety of those. Like, there are so many cards in this game. I want to say there's like 100 cards in this game. I mean, it's a pretty big deck. And there's a lot of variation here. There's some repeats, but there's a lot of different things you can do with these cards. Like, I like the beets, how no, it's the radishes. The radishes score for every other radish you have in your garden basket. Yeah. So you're doing some set collecting. The other cards I really like is there's some cards are not best to be planted and harvested. They may only be worth 2 points. And you're like, dang, I got to grow this guy 3 times and water him 3 times just for 3 points. Well, there's other cards where they have a really good plant effect and a really good compost effect. So your best thing to do with that card is plan it to use that action, then discard it to use its action, especially if it's something that's mean towards one of your neighbors and they have a really good card out there.
I couldn't help but notice you pointed at me when you said that.
It was kind of a vague point. Bob won last night, so maybe that was a natural.
I was closer than I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
Like, it was actually within a couple of points.
Yeah, I was farther behind than I thought I would be, and I played this twice more than you guys.
Well, I was going. Bob had a couple of like the larger guys, but I had like several medium point value, which bolstered my score like dramatically, and also because. You know, we knew Mike knew how to play, was very familiar with the game, played it a bunch more than us. And then Bob was like, had the appearance of being the leader. I was able to cultivate some of those mid-size.
Under the radar.
Because they weren't as and then
flashy as the 10-point garlic.
Yeah, they're not as flashy. And I did have a nice little combo that pulled off where I could, when I finished my tomato, I could move all of the stuff over to another one, which then basically allowed me to complete that. So I was able to harvest both of those. Now they're both out of the way and safely in my basket, right? Like, so guaranteed points right there. But yeah, lots of interesting combos and things to build up. I think that also this game plays very quickly. You know, again, 3 actions on your turn, unless you get a card that gives you another action or so, you know. But again, that's not a lot.
Right.
And it's it's broke down very well, like what it is. You can churn through your hand pretty quick, you know, to either force growth or, you know, compost from your hand. I like that you can compost from your hand and, you know, from your garden.
Yep.
So it does give you some options there where you can cycle through your cards because you're just drawing from a communal deck, you know. So you know, it's like, I don't really love like many of these things where you can take other turns or, you know, turns to sort of clear out your hand a bit, and that way you can get some better
discard, right, to put an extra growth on something and draw a whole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's ways you can dump cards to get new ones.
Yeah, I like that compost action is even a thing because anytime a game adds a mechanic of when you discard cards, you get something. That's just a cool mechanic I don't see in enough games. So I think it's cool that can give you an action, and it doesn't matter if you do it from your hand or your garden.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit.
That makes those cards a lot more valuable because maybe it's a card you planned on harvesting, and you're working on it, but now you've got like 4 pests on it because everybody keeps ganging up on that card. You're like, okay, it's going to take me forever to get all these pests off of here to get this thing fully grown. Screw it. I'm just going to compost it, and maybe I'll be able to pass these pests on to someone else with the compost ability.
Something to, yeah. And if you can't, anyways, well, now it's out of your garden, you got a fresh spot, you can plant something better there, you know, so.
But yeah, I was impressed with what this game gives you in such a tiny little box. There's not a ton of rules overhead. It's easy to play. It's fun. I see a lot of different strategies with the way the cards work off of each other. And I mean, for me, I would definitely recommend this game. It has a lot of interaction with some people might say is mean, because you are directly screwing over other people at the table. It has a lot of take that.
Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even though there's a lot of take that, I don't feel like it's overly mean. Like, yeah, you can put somebody's pest token on there and it gets a little bit annoying or whatnot, or you use the parasitic weed and actually kill somebody thing, but it's not the end of the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, oh, now my game is ruined because I lost this one guy. Oh, there's a lot of other things you can do to try to catch up. Yeah.
Play better.
No, you're not totally screwed if somebody takes out your high point card.
If you are living and dying by that 15-point plant, like, you better be ready for it to go because it's the biggest target on the board.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you have to be ready for that to be the target. I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
Yep.
But no, I again, this is a game that I could get played with my in-laws and my wife. It's light, it's fast. We like playing mean games, you know, where you can kind of, you know, there's other games like that, you know, like Cover Your Assets and games like that, where now you're stealing stuff from other players, you're doing things, you know, and this has the right amount of player interaction. I think it's not so mean, but it's mean enough, you know. I love that the spatial aspect of like, well, I've already got like full shade plants. So, but I've got this one in my hand I love. And it's like, well, am I going to get rid of one of those? You know, I can only sit on this for so long before, you know, I either got to grow these and get them out of here, or maybe I just compost one. You know what? Never mind.
Yep.
Like, it's just not going to do what I need it to do. I'd rather have this guy. This guy's going to do better for me. And so it does present a lot of interesting decisions and strategy there. And again, lots of replayability because you just don't know what cards you're going to draw, you know? And I have a hard time seeing that if everybody that gets the Brussels sprouts automatically is just going to win the game every time, or a garlic. I just don't see it because I think there's so many ways that you can take down those cards.
Yep.
Or you could do what I did and almost won, which is by just having a lot of small ones. You were spending a lot of time protecting those high point guys, right?
Spend
a lot of time
cards
and
doing
energy,
that,
right? To cultivate those. And while I'm just cranking out a bunch of little ones, you know, it almost won me the game. So I feel like both strategies are viable.
Yep.
You know, and we don't know what Mike was doing. He lost so badly. No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't know. I kind of forgot he was playing.
Except for you and Mike pessed it up with some of my cards pretty early, and I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
And but no, I was able to recover well from that, though. You know what I mean? And it just by trying things, you know, it wasn't like you got to be an expert at the game or anything. I was just trying out a couple of things. I felt like I was very competitive. It was satisfying.
Yeah.
You know, so.
It's got a really good rule book. I mean, it's small because there's not a ton of rules for the game, but I found everything I wanted to in here. It was very easy to learn the game straight from the rule book. It's got plenty of clarifications. It shows you what all the icons do, and no issues with the rule book at all.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, this is a Kickstarter preview, so we're not going to rate it from 1 to 10 like we would a fully finished production copy, but we are going to go around and just recommend it. You know, or not recommend it.
Right.
So, Bobby?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. Like, you know, it's the nice little, like you said, like spatial awareness, like, because you only have the 6 plots that you can deal with. A little bit of interaction, but not like too much. And cutesy art, which I enjoy.
I enjoy the art quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike?
It's a definite recommend for me. I like small box games with low rules overhead that I can get to the table frequently. And this one has a ton of player interaction and replayability because of this huge deck of cards. Definite recommend for me.
Yeah, same. When Mike was kind of explaining the game before I actually put eyes on it, I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. And the second I started looking at the cards, I'm like, oh, I'm in. You know, just from the fun kind of Plants vs. Zombies, you know, angry looking, or well, some of these plants are smiley and happy looking, and some look mean, you know.
And the onion's crying.
Yeah, the onion's crying. I love it. It was fun. I had a lot of fun. Very, very highly recommend this. I'm glad we had the opportunity to preview this. Mike just reached out, right? You reached out to the designer and said, hey, we'd like to look at it.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
So, you know, we're not getting paid to do this. We're just, hey, let us look at your game. We want to talk about it.
And we like it. So
yeah, and it's always nice. That's always a bonus.
It's always a bonus.
So yeah, I like this. I had a lot of fun with this. So I look forward to seeing this hopefully have a very successful, like 1 billion. Is that what it made? $1 billion on Kickstarter?
Oh yeah, at least
$1 billion. But yeah, so this has been Soiled. And for the Board Game Rundown, I've been Tim.
Bob.
Mike.
See you next time.